Welcome to the Everything Apartments podcast. I'm your host, Eric Christopher. I'm president of WSC Realty Advisors here in Long Beach, California, where I've been an apartment broker, owner, and property manager for the last 15 years. This podcast covers all aspects of multifamily investments, from buying and financing properties. We also cover day-to-day operations and management, which is where we will be today, and into reinvestment strategies to increase your net worth. Along with great guests on many of the previous episodes, we also like to do property management best practice shows. So today we'll do part one of a drill down into renting your units faster and more efficiently. An empty apartment unit is a lot like an empty seat on an airplane. The second that plane takes off with empty seats, the revenue potential is lost forever on those seats. And that's the same as an apartment for each day, week, or month your unit sits empty. Let's take a $1,750 a month rent. That divides down to $58 per day. And that doesn't sound like much, but it sure can add up quick. Speed and convenience is the first key to efficiently filling your vacancies with good tenants. And that's a top priority within our company. It really is the first step in the property management continuum. For us, the process actually begins when we receive the 30-day move-out notice from the existing tenant. The first thing we do after we receive that notice is to schedule a walkthrough. Now, if you have a good tenant in that unit, they've been there a while, you know them, they've kept the unit in good condition, you can probably use this walkthrough as the move-out inspection before they move out. But the reason I go in that early is to get a plan together for what will happen after they leave. Will this be a simple turnaround with a fix-it or two, or will it be better to consider doing larger upgrades to achieve a better rent? Either way, sizing up the unit early will pay dividends later. Our goal, no matter the scope of work, is to have our handyman or construction crew begin the day after the tenant vacates. I've even had them begin just minutes after the tenant moves out their final box. Going back to when we get the notice from the existing tenant, we stay in regular touch with that tenant over the 30-day period to make sure they're going to be out on the day they promised. I don't want our schedule to be ruined if they have to hold over for a few days or a week longer than we thought. If the plan is in place ahead of time with the right people involved, a unit can be rent ready for showing in just a day or two after it's vacated. Now, obviously, that may take a little longer if you're doing larger improvements, but even with that, if it's scheduled right and planned right, it shouldn't be down that long. Now, let's turn the page and talk about marketing and renting the unit. I don't recommend showing the unit until it's rent ready or very close to. I know it's tempting, but when I've done this, I've tracked the conversion to them becoming a tenant, and it's actually very low. And the phrase, "you never get a second chance to make a first impression," does fit here. With a prospective tenant, the thing that needs to happen when they view the unit is they have to mentally see themselves living there. If we show them a messy unit, even if you tell them what you're planning to do in the near future, they won't be able to visualize it and see themselves living there at that point in time, and the probability of them moving forward is very much decreased. Now let's back up and talk about marketing the unit. As we get to the end of preparing the unit, whether it's a day or two or a week or two, we're coordinating to get the marketing materials out right about the time the guys are taking off from the unit with their tools in their truck. Being in the Long Beach apartment business for so many years and driving around, I see a lot of for rent signs as anybody would driving around the city. It surprises me how lackluster this is for many buildings. As an example, I see for rent signs all the time that are handwritten and so difficult to read it looks like a 5-year-old wrote it. Or my personal favorite is a for rent sign that's missing the phone number altogether. Yeah, you've seen them. I don't know how the heck that would ever work. But the first step is we create a very clear yard sign, whether that's a lawn sign or a banner on the side of the building, depending on the traffic and the situation of the building. But we also add a QR code to each thing we have on the building. And you all know what a QR code is because we've been using them in restaurants to pull their menu up during the pandemic. We do the same thing, driving them to the Zillow ad, which will give them a lot of information about the property, maybe save a phone call from somebody that just wanted to ask the price or what the unit's like in the inside. You can show them all that on the Zillow ad. Marketing units has definitely changed with the advent of the online environment. Online advertising goes way beyond Zillow. The last lease that I wrote was driven off of a posting I put on Facebook. It was actually a friend of a friend that was looking for just the kind of unit I had for lease, and we got it done that way. Instagram and Twitter are also great for that. Now let's get into the reception from a potential tenant. I call on a lot of for rent signs as a tenant. And I do that because I want to stay abreast of what's going on in the market, what the asking rents are, kind of the condition of any building's exterior, maybe amenities I can see to kind of size it up. And it really baffles me what I find when I make these calls. I actually track the stats of my calls. I can't help it. I'm an accountant and kind of an Excel geek in my college life and a little after, but it's very interesting. Believe it or not, in 55% of the calls I make to for rent signs, no one picks up the call and no one ever returns the call either. Of the 45% of the calls that are picked up or returned, it's not always easy to schedule a showing. In some cases, the owner or manager isn't available for 2 to 3 days ahead. This could be the case for owner managers. They might have a job and they're busy with their families. They may not live close to the property, but this can be a problem with larger management companies, as your actual rep that works on your property in a big firm may be managing 250 to 300 units. And how do you know the priority that your vacancy is getting to, let's say, 10 or 12 that they have going on at the same time? The tenants you really want to have in your building are usually very busy with work and life responsibilities, just like you are. And if the process to make contact and see the unit quickly is inconvenient, they'll be gone in 60 seconds, gone for good. One of the reasons our management business model is about 95% of buildings located here in Long Beach is we're usually 15 minutes or less away from any building. We're accessible from about 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day of the week to take these calls. When a prospective tenant asks when they can see the unit, they're sometimes kind of thrown back by my suggestion of meeting them in 15 minutes. For example, they have friends or family living in the neighborhood and want to be closer to them. A lot of these people are driving around looking at signs and making calls the second they see them. A lot of times a prospect will call me parked in front of the building. I'll tell them to walk around the corner and grab a coffee or a soda, and I'll see them in 15 minutes. And that may get me just the showing that the other guys aren't going to get, and they may turn out to be a really great tenant. If the prospect needs a future date to see the unit, small window of time, we schedule it. I'm used to showing units at 6:30 in the morning, 9 p.m. on a Sunday night. It really is a 7-day-a-week process to get the right people in. Our biggest front-end goal for you when the scenario arises is do whatever it takes to get a good tenant signed up. So ask yourself a question. How long did your last vacancy take to fill? And if you're self-managing and, again, overly busy with work and family and other life responsibilities, and it's a bit of a struggle, you may not live close to your property, or maybe your current manager just doesn't have the plan or the process or the systems in place to do this efficiently, I encourage you to give me a call. If it's done quickly and efficiently, you don't have to look at a zero on that rent roll income statement for the next month or two. Heck, you may not even have to look at a zero in 1 month. Stay tuned for the next episode of Everything Apartments podcast, where we'll pick up part 2 of this discussion, beginning with receiving leads and going through the process of completing the lease. With any questions or help I can provide you in this process, my phone number and email will be in the show notes. I encourage you to give me a call. And again, thank you for listening to the Everything Apartments podcast. I'm your host, Eric Christopher.